A good example of the complexity of conflict is the war in Syria, now 10 years old. You and I have talked about it in the past. You recently were in Syria. You were visiting the Al Hol refugee camp. We had that striking footage at the beginning of our program today, in which you referred to the situation there as a scandal. There are, by my count, over 60,000 refugees, some of them ISIS families living in those camps. You were quoted in something I saw, Peter, as saying, this is really the place where hope is going to die. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, child protection crisis with which we're confronted today. Tell us about what you saw on the ground so that our viewers have some sense of this place so far away, and then think with us about what can be done about it so that we don't have a generation of people who will make war all over again.
Well, one thing, again, is, of course, the very dire situations for the people living in Al Hol. And as you rightly say, David, that's first and foremost women and children of those fighters Islamic State group fighters who have fought the war till the bitter end in Barghouth. They have come to Al Hol camp. They are there, have been there for the last 2 years, which means that for the kids in those camps, and it's more than 40,000 children below 12 years of age, which haven't really seen sustained schooling efforts, which have lived in tent and makeshift provisional habitat. It's a very difficult situation. It's a place full of violence within the camp. It's a very dire, again, physical environment in which these kids and women are growing up, which alone is a big problem. What is even more difficult for me to accept is the fact that there is no process of either screening or adjudication of those who are in the camps, which would give them a perspective of how they can get out and whether they are adjudicated, whether they are eventually liberated, because there is no proof of any violations of laws and fundamental provisions of international law having been violated by them. And so there is no perspective of due process, which I think is almost as difficult to accept as the dire situation in the camp are. What can you do in those situations? Of course, on the one side, and that's what we and a couple of other humanitarian organizations are doing, we can bring humanitarian assistance. We do tens of thousands of meals every day for those people in the camp. We can offer medical services. We can, for the kids, try to have a minimal form of education, schooling, psychological accompaniment for these difficult situations. So there are ways to improve the situation in the camp. But what is even more important is that the international community comes together and deals with this as an international issue and gives a perspective of either a legal due process form of accountability for those who have committed crimes and a perspective of going back to their countries. And so working diplomatically to find pathways to return those who haven't committed any crimes back to their countries or being adjudicated in their countries of origin is of critical importance. So it's both, it's a improvement of the situation on the ground, but even more important, it's giving perspectives to return, giving perspective of due process, which are so bitterly needed. And I think where the reason why I called it a place without hope is that I feel very much that the international community, at least in large part, is trying to zoom out these problems. They're collective responsibility to deal with it. And this is what makes this situation so difficult to accept.